I wanted to talk about JFK briefly. I think I'm confused about whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. I've kind of gone back and forth. So I just did a brief dive into a few things that I've heard about him. So I didn't go too deep in this video. But it's claimed that he was against the CIA, against the Jews or Israel, and against the Federal Reserve. So is any of that actually true, or is it just patriot myth? So I'm not sure. I don't have access to any secret documents or anything like that. Um, but I did just look in some news articles and a few other sources and kind of paints a different picture of JFK, not the one that a lot of people I think want to believe. So on the left here is a 1953 article um, where Kennedy is talking, urging for peace in the Middle East, which, right, is a good thing, right? And he wanted a United Nations resolution. And the senator said that he was very much concerned with the nation's position in the United Nations with respect to the censuring of Israel regarding the Kibya incident. So there he's defending Israel. Over all the way on the right is an article from 1958, and it's a uh, a celebration for Israel's 10th anniversary. And on the bottom there, you can see one of the principal speakers is U.S. Senator John F. Kennedy celebrating the Jews' creation of Israel. Um, in the middle there, from 1960, it says, oh, and no, this article is written by Milton Friedman, which was interesting, right? Because didn't he become head of the Federal Reserve later on? And there it says Iraq and Saudi Arabia protested Senator John F. Kennedy's pro Israel speech before the Zionist Organization of America. Iraq handed a formal diplomatic note to the State Department urging the silencing of Senator Kennedy. And on the right there from 1961, it says Iraq imposes a ban on Kennedy's book. um, and the book is titled Strategy for Peace. And apparently, Iraq banned it because it contains Israel and Zionist propaganda. Hmm. Did Kennedy actually write it? Just attributed to him? If he did write it, it supports him being at the 10th anniversary, giving a speech, and and talking at the Zionist meeting. So regarding that Zionist meeting, I believe this is it right here. So he did give it, and I don't know. This doesn't sound like he's against Jews or Israel to me. Uh, he said that some do not agree. 3 weeks ago, I, Kennedy, said in a public statement, Israel is here to stay. The next day, I was attacked by Cairo radio, rebuking me for my faith in Israel. For Israel was not created in order to disappear, right? So it's going to stay there. So he's not trying to make it disappear. Israel will endure and flourish. It is the child of hope and the home of the brave. Oh man, yeah, they murder Palestinian children and children all over the world, right? They're the brave. It can neither be broken by adversity nor demoralized by success. It carries the shield of democracy and it honors the sword of freedom. What a joke. And no area of the world has ever had an overabundance of democracy and freedom. It is worth remembering, too, that Israel is a cause that stands beyond the ordinary changes and chances of American public life. In our pluralistic society, it has not been a Jewish cause. It has not been a Jewish cause any more than an Irish independence was solely the concern of Americans of Irish descent. The ideals of Zionism have, in the last half century, been repeatedly endorsed by presidents and members of Congress from both parties. Friendship for Israel is not a partisan matter, it is a national commitment. Wow. Yet within this tradition of friendship, there is a special obligation on the Democratic Party. It was President Woodrow Wilson who forecast the prophetic wisdom, the creation of a Jewish homeland. And note, my note, wasn't it also Woodrow Wilson, or I should say the people behind him, who had Woodrow Wilson push the New World Order? That's when you started seeing that word being used, was during World War I and right after, with the creation of the League of Nations that Woodrow Wilson and his handlers pushed. Anyway, continuing, it was President Franklin Roosevelt who kept alive the hopes of Jewish redemption during the Nazi terror. So there, Kennedy is using the word Nazi, so clearly he does not know the truth about the National Socialists or what Germany was fighting for, because he would never use the Jewish derogatory term Nazi. And it's funny they say there that Franklin Roosevelt kept alive the hopes of the New World Order, right? By destroying the people who were resisting the Jew world order, the Germans, and basically all of Europe. Anyway, continuing, it was President Harry Truman who first recognized the new state of Israel. And my note, I heard Truman was also part Jew and gave it status in world affairs. And may I add that it would be my hope and pledge to continue this democratic tradition and to be worthy of it. First, I propose that the new president reaffirm our sincere friendship for all the people of the Middle East, whatever their religion or race or politics. So that sounds good, right, from a worldly perspective. Second, I propose that we make it crystal clear that the United States means what it said in the Tripartite Declaration of 1950, that we will act promptly and decisively against any nation in the Middle East which attacks its neighbor. I don't think the US stuck to that, right? Because Israel has attacked all their neighbors since its very existence. So here's an article from 1960, and I'm not going to read it. You can pause it and read it, but it just talks about the man behind Kennedy. Note this was also written by Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman seemed to really like to write about JFK. Uh, anyway, the Jew behind Kennedy is Mike Feldman. So go research him. But anyway, it's interesting that Kennedy, of course, has Jew handlers. So was he really opposing the Jews if he's got Jews telling him what to do? So top left there, it's from the Arizona Post, 1960, yet another article by Milton Friedman. It says Senator Kennedy pledged we will never turn our back on our steadfast friends in Israel, whose adherence to the democratic way of life must be admired by all friends of freedom. It's unbelievable. Um, yeah, on the bottom left there, it says Kennedy was an honorary Jubilee chairman. So Kennedy has accepted the honorary chairmanship of the Diamond Jubilee observance of Yeshiva University. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a Jewish university. So, and then over on the right from 1960, there's a picture of Kennedy and a Jew, Goldberg. And the title says JFK cabinet makes history. President-elect John F. Kennedy announced the appointment of Arthur J. Goldberg uh, as Secretary of Labor. The appointment puts two Jews into the United States cabinet for the first time in American history. Senator Kennedy previously had chosen Governor Abraham Ribicoff as his Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare. So that statement, if you read that article, isn't actually true because there were Jews in the cabinet going all the way back to at least Lincoln. And well, in reality, I mean, Lincoln was part Jew, and Alexander Hamilton in the very beginning of our country was part Jew, was a Jew. So this isn't actually a true statement, but it's interesting that they point that out here. that he did put Jews in his cabinet. So you can't say he's anti-Jew when he's putting Jews in his cabinet and he's backed by Jews, or at least that contradicts the story we're told. So maybe he had a reason for that. So this is interesting. From 1961, action to free silver taken by president. Congress asked to eliminate all bills backed by metal, make it a commodity. So it says the silver certificate, a familiar item of currency since 1878, will disappear from circulation if Congress approves President Kennedy's new silver policy. All $1 bills are silver certificates, right? So those are actually issued by the government, not by the Federal Reserve, as are some $2, $5, and $10 bills. All of these would be discarded during the next 25 or 30 years to be replaced by Federal Reserve banknotes, which are backed by gold, but they weren't backed by gold. That's a big that's a joke and a lie. So, but holy cow! So there is supposedly JFK putting in a bill to or law, or wants to put in a bill or a law to remove the remaining silver money out of circulation and replace it with Federal Reserve banknotes. That doesn't sound like he opposes the Federal Reserve to me, if this is true. It says while Congress would have to approve this part of the Kennedy plan, so they're calling it his plan, the Kennedy plan, the president yesterday ordered an immediate end to Treasury sales of silver at artificially low prices. Moving down more, the Kennedy program would represent the most important national change in silver in many decades. In effect, the president wants to end silver status as an important monetary metal and make it a freely traded commodity like copper or soybeans. So that's interesting because remember, if you read about the greenback era, the greenback, the Grange, oh man, I remember what it was called, but anyway, back in the late 1700s, 1870s to probably I guess early 1900s, that was what there was a big fight over in the U.S. was over using silver and gold and greenbacks as money, and obviously the bankers wanted to demonetize, and they did demonetize silver. Right, it wasn't used to be able to pay taxes and debt or something like that anymore. And that fight went all the way up through, I think, William Jennings Bryan in the early 1900s. So here, Kennedy is just completing that banker agenda now, almost 100 years after it began. So it says Mr. Kennedy directed the Treasury to stop using the stockpile as a source of supply for coin making. So he's saying don't use silver as money. That's unbelievable. He said that henceforth, silver needed by the mints should be withdrawn from monetary reserves with an equivalent amount of silver certificates pulled out of circulation at the same time, right? So he's taking real money out of circulation. Real money that people could use, he is removing. The Treasury will begin at once to withdraw $5 and $10 silver certificates in order to tap reserves needed for coinage. Before it could withdraw $1 and $2 certificates, Congress would have to authorize Federal Reserve notes in these denominations. Mr. Kennedy said he will ask Congress to do this early next session. The president also announced he will ask for repeal of silver purchase laws enacted in 1934, 39, and 46. And that's important because that plays into why the executive order 11100, whatever it was created, which people think was done for a good reason, which it was not. These laws put a floor under the, oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, on the right, Mr. Kennedy said silver should eventually be demonetized. Again, that's a banker agenda. That is unbelievable that he would say that if this article is true, and he actually did. Except for use in coinage, but we know that ended in 1964 at 90% and altogether in 1969. Trading would be possible only if Congress repealed blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter. Um, the silver certificates, which would be withdrawn from circulation, are backed by 1.7 billion ounces of silver, enough to take care of coinage needs for the next 25 to 30 years. So they're lying there. They're pitching it to the people who are reading this article that they have 1.7 billion ounces of silver, that they're going to make silver coinage for the next 25 to 30 years, which if this was written in 1961, that would bring you to basically 1991. But they ended silver in 1969. So what a bunch of lying bastards. It's unbelievable what they do. So here is C. Douglas Dillon. He was the head of the Treasury that was working with Kennedy. And maybe this was the guy responsible for it. Maybe he put the idea in Kennedy's head. I don't know. But this was the guy at the Treasury who did it along with Kennedy. So Dillon was born. Oh, yeah. So, anyway, what's important about Dillon, if you can see on the bottom there, it says his paternal grandfather, Samuel Lepowski, was a poor Jewish immigrant from Poland. So, once again, we have a Jew demonetizing silver, a Jew subverting our monetary system, a Jew subverting our nation every single time. So, of course, he would make this decision because he was a Jew. And of course, you can see they changed his name to try to anglicize it to make him fit in. On the right there is his dad, I believe, Clarence Lepowski, who then changed his name to Dillon. And there it says that he was one of the richest men in the U.S., worth 150 to 200 million dollars, and that's like around 1900 or something. That is insane. So, and on the left is a news article from 1963, and it says the dollar bill in your pocket can be exchanged for silver at the bank. But if Treasury Secretary Dillon has his way, the $1 silver certificate will disappear. In its place will be $1 Federal Reserve note, which currently comes only, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. It says Dillon has chosen to take care of certain technical matters by attaching a rider to last session's unsuccessful silver bills. The silver bill is intended to remove outdated silver price supports. But the rider does two things. It permits the secretary to pay off silver certificates with bullion instead of dollars. So you're not going to get a silver dollar. And it calls for the printing of Federal Reserve notes in $1 denominations. So, right, again, the $1 Federal Reserve notes are going to replace the $1 silver certificates. And also note that he's claiming there they're going to pay your silver certificates in silver bullion, but not silver dollars. But later on, I read an article that I guess by the late 60s, if you still had them, you couldn't even get any silver. You could only get a Federal Reserve note for your silver certificate. So they're just liars and deceivers. Everything is planned out. U.S. citizens who hold Federal Reserve notes are not allowed to exchange them for gold. Well, there it says, here it says U.S. citizens who hold Federal Reserve notes are not allowed to exchange them for gold or silver. So what I read, I don't know if that had to do with citizens or I guess maybe foreigners. I should have included that here, but anyway. And then continuing, it says, although foreign nationals can, a privilege which has led to the current gold shortage. So again, how does that make any sense? U.S. citizens can't get their own silver with their own silver certificates, but a foreign national, somebody who's not part of our nation, can take our silver by turning in our own money. This is completely insane. And I believe this is what they did back in the 1860s and 70s and 80s when they were doing away with silver and the greenbacks as well. I don't have that stuff in front of me, but that's a really fascinating period to research too, because they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And this is an example of it. So, anyway, here's Executive Order 11110. And yeah, so it talks about allowing the Treasury Secretary to issue silver certificates, right? And on the bottom there, it says critics of the theory note that executive order was a technicality that only delegated existing presidential powers to the Secretary of Treasury for administrative convenience. So On the right, that's the actual law, Public Law 8836. And when you go to the middle, section 3, it says the first sentence of the ninth paragraph of section 16 of the Federal Reserve Act, 12 USC 418, is amended by inserting $1 and $2 immediately after notes of the denomination of. So that right there is allowing the Federal Reserve to now issue $1 and $2 Federal Reserve notes, which were going to replace the silver uh, the silver certificate dollars that were issued by the Treasury, by the government itself. Now, top, um, on the top, section 1, it says the Silver Purchase Act of 1934 and 1939 and 1946 are hereby repealed. So now on the bottom left, it says silver certificate, US. It says, as was usual with currency during this period, the year date on the bill did not reflect when it was printed, but rather, I'm sorry, here it is. Under the Silver Purchase Act of 1934, which was just repealed, the authority to issue silver certificates was given to the United States Secretary of the Treasury, right? So this Public Law 8836, which Kennedy and Dillon submitted to Congress, which Congress approved, repealed the Silver Purchase Act of 1934, which took away the ability of the United States Secretary of Treasury to issue silver certificates, but they still needed to issue some for some reason, just for a short period of time. So Kennedy issued Executive Order 11110 in order to give back that authority to issue silver certificates to the U.S. Secretary of Treasury. It was nothing new. He wasn't doing anything to oppose the Federal Reserve Act. He literally just helped the Federal Reserve Act here with this public law. So, I mean, that's unbelievable. And so that refutes all of the patriot truther claims that Kennedy was opposing the Federal Reserve Act with this executive order. And therefore, this executive order would give the Jews no reason, or the CIA or anybody else, any reason whatsoever to kill him. Now, I'm not claiming they didn't kill him. I believe that they did kill him. I'm just saying this can't be the reason for it. So therefore, what is the reason why they killed him? Now, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but it's not this. Here's Public Law 8836. Oh, I already showed you that. So why did I put this here? Oh, there was a reason. So it just said there, Kennedy signed the bill into law on June 4th, 1963. So Kennedy obviously he pushed and supported and signed off on this law. So again, he's not opposing the Federal Reserve. There it said the act became law and repealed the Silver Purchase Act of 1934. And yeah, on the same day, he issued the executive order. So, oh, there on the bottom it says the Silver Purchase Act had authorized and required the Secretary of the Treasury to buy silver and issue silver certificates. With its repeal, right, of the Silver Purchase Act 1934, the president needed to delegate to the Treasury Secretary the president's own authority under the Agricultural Adjustment Act. So, yeah, it all makes sense why all this was done. Here's the 12 U.S. Code 418, the printing of notes, right? I showed you that here in section 3 of Public Law 8836. And yeah, you can see there in the middle, it says that now they could issue notes of the denomination of $1 and $2. So the $1 and $2 wasn't there originally in this law, but now it is after Kennedy pushed this law through. So this helps this is the Federal Reserve law. This helps the Federal Reserve. They removed all of our actual, true, honest, real money. So a lot of people tell me that he opposed the CIA. That totally may be true. I can't refute that, and I don't have any access to any again, like, special secret documents or anything like that. Well, my only point here is that when people talk about him opposing the CIA, they cite a comment attributed to him that he stated he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. Well, where did that statement come from? This was never in print until 1966. This is the name of the article: CIA maker of policy or tool. And this is where that statement came from. That's attributed to Kennedy, and it says that it was a uh, one of the highest officials of his administration um, stated that Kennedy wanted to. So it's actually that statement is actually coming from one of the highest officials in Kennedy's administration. It's not coming from Kennedy himself. So who is this highest official? We have zero idea. They don't tell us. Now there may be this comment may be somewhere in some special file, or I didn't search archive.org or any type of CIA or FBI document, so it may be there. But there's no proof that this was actually stated by Kennedy. And unless I'm misreading it, it looks like it wasn't said by Kennedy. It was stated by one of his highest officials. So, in my opinion, this means absolutely nothing. And then on the bottom there, it says the critics shrug aside the fact that President Kennedy, after the most rigorous inquiry into the agency's affairs, right, the CIA's agency's affairs, methods and problems after the Bay of Pigs, did not splinter it after all and did not recommend congressional supervision. So they're saying there in this article that Kennedy did literally nothing after the inquiry. So the Bay of Pigs invasion was in 1861. 2 years, and as far as I can tell, he did nothing to splinter the CIA, right? Because he was murdered in 1863. So it was about 2.5 years. And I need to deep dive into this, but just a little perusal, I found nothing about him doing anything to the CIA. Maybe he did. I'm just saying I didn't find anything. So, if there's proof, what is it? Post it in the comments. I'd like to see it. So now, again, this does not mean the CIA or the Jews controlling the CIA did not kill him. I think the government or the CIA did kill Kennedy. But what's the real reason, right? Just the same question with the Federal Reserve thing. So Kennedy loved Israel. He was helping the Federal Reserve. He supported the UN. And I don't see any evidence of him dismantling the CIA. So if you take those four reasons out of the reasons why he would have been murdered, what was the reason why he was murdered? And there was definitely a reason. They didn't kill him for no reason. But what is it? So here is an article from 1960. I don't know why I keep on saying 1800. 1963. And it says Abraham Lincoln's statue looks down on the flag draped casket of President Kennedy. So, I mean, they took this picture on purpose. It's not an accident. Abe Lincoln was a Jew. He was a monster. He was part of the conspiracy. He helped destroy the United States and its people. There was a complete Jew Marxist takeover during the Civil War in his government. So he was considered a martyr of the Jews. And after the war, the Jews even claimed that he was part Jew. And you can watch some videos from Mike Gaddy. Mike Gaddy does a good deep dive into the history of Lincoln and pretty much shows that Lincoln is part Jew. So, and on the right, it says Jewish Community Memorial for our martyr president, John F. Kennedy. Just unbelievable. So the Jews are considering him a martyr. I mean, this could be propaganda, could be trying to lead people astray, but I don't know. And you can see Mayor Feldman, right? Wasn't that the guy who was backing Kennedy? And then to finish it off here, here's an article from December 13th, 1963. The John F. Kennedy Memorial Building being built in Jerusalem, Israel. I never heard of such a thing. I literally had no idea this thing even existed. And there on the right-hand side is a picture of it. This is a memorial to their martyr, John F. Kennedy. He was the president of the United States of America. Why would they possibly build a memorial to him, to a supposed Irish Catholic, in Israel? Why honor JFK if JFK actually opposed them. Hitler did oppose the satanic Jewish one world order, and Hitler doesn't have a memorial in Israel that I'm aware of. If he does, please post in the comments if I missed that one. But so yeah, I don't know. Just another thing to look into, I guess, right?